to die of COVID-19. A longtime friend of the Vegas family.
The ninth floor Domo doesn't want you to hear any of this.
Has hit everyone hard.
I couldn't believe it. It is wonderful family, nice, beautiful kids.
This girl died within like a day.
The mom and dad, and it was pretty much
because somebody was in the house, quote unquote, self-isolating.
Tony Pinaretta says he hasn't been able to reach Emily's father, but given the circumstances, understands why.
Emily especially, I mean, it was his little angel. You know, I can imagine how he must be today.
If there is a real lesson from this tragedy, it's we should have vaccinated essential workers at the beginning of the vaccine rollout, and you know that mistake has consequences.
Catherine McDonald, Global News.
So the ninth floor Chomo does not want you to hear any of
Two
this.
police say a man has died in an
last 10
industrial
minutes of
accident.
non-stop is exactly
The man
the
was
fucking
killed
news
after
update
being
I was trying
struck
to
by
bring
a
you.
front-end loader at Fermar Asphalt,
Yeah, he's
where
getting
he
in
died
the way
at the scene
non-stop
mid-afternoon.
with
The Ministry of Labor is going to be
safety of the
investigating.
public in
The company, by the
general.
way, was previously fined $150,000 for a workplace industry in 2011 at that same site. On that occasion, a truck driver was severely injured by asphalt after being released onto the cab of his truck, leaving it in.
What?
Developing news from Toronto's Little Italy neighborhood tonight. Firefighters were at the scene of a fire at a residential and commercial building. This is in the Ossington and College area. The call came in just after 3 p.m. We can tell you that 2 people were treated for minor smoke inhalation. While the fire's being knocked down, the fire crews are still putting out hot spots there. And in Newmarket, a neighborhood resident is the talk of the town after rescuing 2 kids from a balcony of a burning home. Now, the person hasn't been identified, but other neighbors and fire officials are heaping on the praise. Firefighters say the home was engulfed in flames, but by the time that they got there, that neighbor had already rescued the kids safely using a ladder. And it's believed this Good Samaritan went to work after the early morning incident. No injuries have been reported, but the home, as you can see, it's destroyed, and as is a vehicle that was parked in the driveway there. And the cause of this very fire is still under investigation.
Honestly, at first I thought someone had thrown a brick off the bridge.
It wasn't a brick, and this could happen to you. The terrifying ordeal this driver experienced on a GTA highway that you need to hear about. We're going to have that after the break.
All distraction.
When you call a Dell Technologies advisor, you get to talk to a real person who can provide tailored solutions that don't fit every small business, they fit yours. That's what it means to really listen. For solutions powered by Intel vPro platform, call an advisor at 310 Dell.
Why is it hard to get silver these days? Because savvy investors recognize the value of physical assets in these turbulent times. Real physical gold and silver takes the threat of stock market paper corruption out of the picture. Precious metal is trust, and Guildhall Wealth Management is the trusted, experienced source for buying and holding your direct or even P or TFSA. Call 1-8.
So you're gonna have to look up Global News, CTV, whatever. So Global News, whatever. April 26, 2021 to find this one. They ran the entire story about the girl at the very beginning of the hour. Yeah, Chomo don't want to hear that. Don't want you to hear that. He's glad people hurt children. This is not Canadian. He wants the army to hurt just as bad. Canadian forces liberated the Netherlands. There's one reason. Oh, point right to the quick of it. Oh, bye.
Don't let your data plan hold you back. Get a data boost from Fido with Fido.
Day? Yeah. So I'd start liking Mondays?
Probably.
But everybody hates Mondays, so I'd suddenly be an out.
Buy tickets in store and online at olg.ca.
This is like a simulcast too, so the commercial breaks will line up with television.
Questions, sneezing, and itchy eyes in late summer to early fall? Clientha Research is conducting a ragweed allergy study with compensation up to $2,675. Ask about the referral program. Visit at clientha.com.
I can make money referring other people to it, eh?
Talk leader. Talk leader.
One officer stops and is talking to a boy on a scooter. He doesn't then just push the boy. He says his kid flying.
Kids are going to be scared to go now because they're going to be like, what happens if the cops come? I'm going to get pushed over. They shouldn't have to think like that.
On Point with Alex Pearson. Weekdays at 6:30 p.m.
Remember, they called in Peel Regional Police to investigate the guy. Peel Region's like the worst for beating up kids.
So, you have your opinions about talk radio. Want to share them and earn
They rob teenagers of their beer and threaten them and shit.
Talk Radio Roundtable. Go to 640toronto.com and click the Radio Roundtable icon.
The sun shone bright today in much of Ontario, and many out for a drive let those rays shine through a sunroof. But a warning for drivers tonight about a problem we first started talking about more than 2 years ago. Sunroofs can shatter without warning, even if your car is brand new. John O'Shea reports.
Bang, like a gunshot. The roof just exploded.
The glass above Phil Demanby's head shattered as he traveled this stretch of highway at cruising speed. He was on a speakerphone at the time talking to his daughter.
She had thought that she had spoken to her dad the last time.
Demanby was at the wheel of a 2021 Volkswagen Atlas driving to work along Highway 407. It was a clear day with a few other drivers nearby. The Atlas was brand new.
I had just pulled it off the lot 10 days earlier.
Suddenly, the glass blew out.
Honestly, at first I thought someone had thrown a brick off the bridge.
Demanby pulled the car off the road and called police. Evidence of the cause.
They couldn't find a brick. They couldn't find a stone.
He says police concluded the problem was the glass itself. As for Volkswagen,
denial. Absolute denial.
Volkswagen Canada told Global News the roof was broken by direct impact from an outside source, likely a rock or other bit of road debris. The sunroof glass performed exactly as designed, that being to shatter into smaller pieces rather than large, sharper, and more dangerous objects.
Really large panoramic sunroof.
The Atlas sunroof problem has been reported by other Volkswagen customers. Transport Canada has investigated hundreds of cases of ruptured sunroofs involving several manufacturers dating back to 2000. 2 years ago, we reported on problems with Hyundai sunroofs that shattered without warning. In Demanby's case, Volkswagen says the event was not in any way due to a manufacturing defect and is not covered by the warranty. Demanby says he's worried about what could happen if a young driver experiences a shattered roof.
Fortunately, I have many years of driving experience that I was able to maintain control. This will not happen to a young driver. They will lose control.
John O'Shea, Global News.
I saw sunroofs open. I saw convertibles this weekend. Not so much today. It's overcast, it's cool, and we've got a lot of rain on the way. When to expect those showers, and who could see thunderstorms in the coming days? That's all coming up.
This spring on Showcase.
My patriarchal ancestor, Lawrence Rutherford, founded our town.
And the creator of The Good Place and Parks and Recreation.
Nathan, I'm calling to request a response to Mayor Chisenhall.
So make sure you check back often. Up in 60 seconds, traffic and your extended forecast.
So one of the things on this newscast is incorrect. They said, to our knowledge, it's the first person in our health system to die under the age of 19. I'm not sure what they meant by our health system. The guy who was in somewhere in Quebec, I think it was Montreal. He had good Christian values. We don't know how he could die. He was 18. There were 2 kids in Sick Kids Hospital that had it. One of them died, but they're saying they died of something else, not COVID. Right. So the COVID didn't help make them sicker, right? You know what you need to heal? Oxygen. Right. You know what this virus does? Fucks up your ability to get oxygen.
She's more than worth it. Spence Diamonds. Find us in
And we changed, nothing stays the same. And that was the end of life as I knew it.
On April 28th, we remember all those who suffered a workplace death, injury, or illness. Learn more at wsibdaysmorning.ca. Time 6:21.
Traffic and weather together on the one brought to you by Audi Mississauga Airport. Up in Chopper 680. Ongoing delays if you're on the westbound 401 in Mississauga and for a stretch to the west end of Milton. Westbound 401 facing west if you're Ontario Express and Mavis Collectors to approaching Mississauga Road. We've also got delays west of Highway 25 to approaching Guelph Line, where it appears traffic slowing because of a cleanup still on the shoulder. Collision cleanup still happening here, but all live lanes are open.
Any questions? Please visit TrueTone.ca to place your orders. We're offering curbside pickup at our location at 980 Dundas Street.
Club Road, and it was closed north of Lawrence for hydro repairs, and it looks like it's open now. If you're traveling through this area, I believe they have cleared all lanes, and so Scarborough Golf Club Road is now
In Canada, and free contactless delivery directly to your door with fresh, fun, and delicious recipes for every palate in your household. We're making mealtime easier and safer than ever before. Get $40 off your first 2 orders at Good Food. That's $80 in savings.
Collectors busy through that stretch. We have delays on the northbound 427 from from the 407 to Highway 7. And northbound 410, it's going to slow down from Steeles to north of Queen. And just a heads up, the north 410 ramp to the east 407, the right lane is blocked off due to construction. You can still use the ramp, just one less lane. That's it for the major routes, though, and city streets are looking up to speed as well. The newest Audi dealer.
Make your idea a reality. The Joel Matlin Entrepreneur.
Book yours or shop online at AudiMississauga.com. Now with a look at the forecast, here's Denise Andriacci. Well, more cloud cover now this evening and showers moving in just ahead of midnight here. Just some light scattered shower activity overnight. We're mostly cloudy for tomorrow. Again, temperatures below seasonal, highs near 11-12 degrees for Tuesday.
Let's start with the glass being half full. It was a nice weekend. The sun was shining. It was beautiful. Today for some of today.
Yeah.
Today, about 5 millimeters, maybe up to 10 millimeters of rain for Thursday. Both days a little milder, but it comes with that wet weather. So we do see the sunshine move back into the forecast for Friday, the final day of April.
The rivers, the lakes, the ponds, the marshes, the wetlands, they're all running rather dry considering it's April and this is typically the wettest they'll get. So we could use some rain to fill those back up and we're going to get it over the course of the next few days. Although much of tomorrow is dry. I'm expecting some late day showers, risk of a thunderstorm here. These are not severe storms, they're upper to mid-level systems, but still risk of a thunderstorm as that temperature hits 12 degrees. Possibly, although latest indications are we're stuck in the 9 to 10 range for Toronto. 8 right now. We're so close to the summer weather. 26 in Chicago, Kansas City at 29. If you're watching us from Windsor, Chatham, even Sarnia.
It's about your job and finances.
If you have a question, ask it at 680news.com/answers.
680 News gets the answers.
We're in this together.
680 News, working for you.
Over the last 10 days, the number of new cases, 680 News time is 6:24. The federal opposition is demanding even further travel restrictions to get a handle on the spread of COVID variants.
They've not done enough to make sure that our borders are safe.
That's NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, who says the feds need to do more to keep variants out of this country, something Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole agrees with as he calls for a further crackdown on international travel.
By stopping flights from all hotspot countries and, in fact, perhaps all international travel temporarily till we can rectify and secure our border.
Last week, the feds announced a 30-day ban on all direct flights from India and Pakistan, but O'Toole calls it a half measure. A year ago, the federal government barred all non-essential travel from non-citizens. However, travel for essential purposes, such as funerals, essential work, and family reunification, are still allowed. All travelers still have to abide by mandatory testing and quarantine rules. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
In just 60 seconds, we'll...
Thursday. Friday's high 10, and then it does warm up slightly this weekend. Here's your dog walking forecast. This is Murphy, the pandemic pupster, and there are a lot of those pups from the pandemic. 7 degrees, slight chance of showers this evening. Farm?
I love that. It feels like everyone has a dog right now. From Tesla CEO to television host, we'll tell you which iconic show this tech billionaire is slated to host next month. That's after the break.
The global. Here's what clients are saying.
and can't work. Your insurer advises that your depression is not serious and denies your claim. What are you going to do? Who can you call? Call me, Aaron Waxman, at 416-661-4878. And don't worry about upfront legal fees because there are none. At my law firm, my team of lawyers only get paid when you get paid. And before you call, you should always remember that there are no bad questions. 416-661-4878 or on your cell phone at pound LTD.
680 News Time, 620. It's the perfect time for a fresh start, like switching to Pure Fiber Internet, the fastest internet technology and the best TV service.
Amazing bundles are in.
Can it be held against me if I have it?
What is it, 150 megabits per second?
An employment lawyer. She's a partner at Severo to Market Law.
We're still ultimately building the plane as we fly it, right? This hasn't been adjudicated. This is sort of a new situation that still needs to go through our courts and process through tribunals. But, you know, for on the whole, employment lawyers generally assess that, yes, employers can ask you for that information. The question then arises what they can do with it. And of course, you know, what sort of privacy implications might arise from it.
Can they say, listen, if you want to work here, you have to get vaccinated? Can they say that?
Yeah, so an employer can't force somebody to become vaccinated, but they can make it a policy encouraging people to be vaccinated, especially if you are in the type of industry where you're serving a client base that is highly vulnerable.
All right, out to the markets now. Where? Investors were generally.
To what? She did these. It's not exactly how it works.
Gold was up $3 to 1,780. On Wall Street, the Dow moved lower, down 61 points to 33,981, but the S&P was up 7, and the Nasdaq.
Remember, you vaccinated all the old people that were the ones that were going to die anyway. First, kill them. Norway says you vaccinate people over 80, they die. But not the PSWs. You have to vaccinate all these old people so I don't get sick. That's what you did. Teachers tried to do the same thing.
Going on another run. It was up almost 12% in the regular trading session, topping $168 at the close, and it ran even further after hours, at one point getting close to $200 the share. Canadian dollar up to 80.66 cents US, and the top stories are next on 680 News.
Right. Time well spent. We are your news talk leader, 640 Toronto.
May Day will mark the return of a popular program here in Toronto. Beginning this Saturday, May 1st, the active TO closures will resume on certain streets in the city. So for the first weekend, the shutdowns will affect Lakeshore Boulevard East, that's between Leslie and Woodbine, and Bayview Avenue from Front to Rosedale Valley Road. Roadways are closed to vehicular traffic, allowing cyclists and pedestrians to take.
Weather forecast you can bank on, because if we're off by more than 3 degrees,
you can win our growing gas jackpot. The 680 News Weather Guarantee. Enter online at 680news.com.
Looking at tonight's forecast, we are expecting some rain to head into the city overnight in the form of showers, going down to 4 degrees for the low, waking up to more chance of showers, 7 degrees, with tomorrow's guaranteed high at 10 with a mainly sunny sky. This is CFTR 680 News at 6:30.
Toronto's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
Good evening. This is Monday, the 26th of April. I'm Sljana Tominzik.
I'm Scott Burnett. Here are the top stories right now.
Ottawa has approved the province's request for help from the Canadian military to ease the burden on healthcare workers in hospitals.
Even with a record number of COVID patients in Ontario ICUs, the province's top doctor says new infections appear to be leveling off.
Sunnybrook's Field Hospital has accepted its first patient. Sad that we're at the point, obviously, that we have to bring in all these alternate resources.
Toronto is closing or partially closing a dozen workplaces with COVID, and the workers have to go home.
To stymie COVID-19, not to create new problems.
Well, Freddie Anderson could be an option relatively soon for the Leafs, and the Raptors got a big game tonight in Tampa. Sports at 45.
Have we reached the bottom in the rental market? Rental prices starting to tick higher. We're taking a look. Record high close for the S&P and NASDAQ, and Tesla in with earnings business at 56.
Tesla.
I'm Erica Vella from Global News, and on my podcast, Whatever Happened To, I talk with people at the center of stories that once gripped the world's attention, like the Pulse nightclub shooting, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, the Australian bushfires, and more. You can listen to Whatever Happened.
401 also been busy. Is linked into about the 400 Express. Otherwise, it's not moving too badly. And again, if you missed it, Scarborough Road is in fact open north of Lawrence. All hydro repairs and crash cleanup finished here, so everybody's getting through again. From the 680 Traffic Center, Carlin Donahue.
Kind of likewise in my situation here. We don't really have much going on the routes I'm looking at. Northbound DVP, it's slow from Winford to north of Lawrence, and northbound 410. We've got delays approaching Queen, and then the north 410 ramp to the east 407. It's partially blocked with construction crews. They're in the right lane. You have the left lane to get through, so you should be fine. We have delays northbound 427 from the 407 to Highway 7, but other than that, everything else is moving up to speed. Now with a look at the forecast, here's Denise Andriacci. Clouds building this evening. We'll see some scattered showers through the overnight. We could see them creep in just before midnight tonight. They should ramp up by tomorrow morning. You may, if you're an early morning commuter, see a bit of wet weather, but we're not expecting anything substantial at all. Temperatures tomorrow are cool again. Daytime highs only near 11, 12 degrees. We only hit 9 today at Pearson. We're currently sitting at 8 under cloudy skies. The overnight low, 4.
680 News Time, 6:32.
The province has otherwise approved its request for military aid in hospitals. This comes as Ontario reports nearly 900 people are in the ICU with COVID-19.
We begin our coverage with 680's Richard Southern.
The Ford government went from rejecting the offer of federal help for hospitals just 10 days ago
That's not
to
what they were
today asking that
They were not offered federal assistance with hospitals. They were offered that the Red Cross could come in and administer vaccines that they didn't possess. That's what they were offered.
3 multi-purpose medical teams will be deployed to Ontario. They contain specialized nursing staff and medical technicians. Solicitor General Sylvia Jones.
I thank the federal government for approving it. What we are looking for is very specialized nurses that can help out in our intensive care unit beds.
Meantime, is it another reversal at Queen's Park? After the Premier Thursday said new measures on paid sick days would be introduced, the Labour Minister, Monty McNaughton, said this today.
We need the federal government to step up and increase payments to workers in this province.
I'm Richard Southern.
Here with All News Radio 680 News, daily case numbers in Ontario are down slightly, but the positivity rate has hit a new high. This comes as the province confirms another case of an extremely rare blood clot in a man who received an AstraZeneca vaccine. 680's Karen Seolan joins us live with the latest from provincial health officials. Karen.
So, Jen, a dose of good news, bad news on the COVID-19 situation in the province. Here's Dr. Barbara Yaffe with what you don't really want to hear first.
Hospitalizations and ICU occupancy are once again at their highest level since the beginning of the pandemic.
But Dr. David Williams says it appears new cases are plateauing.
We are starting to see the bending of the curve. In some areas, we're seeing it actually coming down. We have to continue to drive it down even further in these weeks ahead.
Williams also announced Ontario's 3rd case of blood clotting, possibly linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. This time, it's a man in his 70s, currently in hospital. But Williams says your risk of getting a blood clot is about 1 in 250,000, and the benefits of being vaccinated far outweigh those odds.
Our case rates in the older population groups, those over 60, definitely those over 80, and our death rates have come down, as well as our hospitalization rates in those age groups are coming down. So it shows you that the vaccine is working.
Reporting live, I'm Karen Seolan.
Sunnybrook has opened up its field hospital to its first patient. 10 beds within the mobile health unit have been made available to help ease pressures in acute care hospitals. Here's 680's Phil Martino with those details. Phil.
Scott, Sunnybrook officials will only say the first patient to be transferred to the mobile health unit is comfortable. According to Deborah Carew with clinical operations, the field hospital will care for those who are recovering or who have recovered from COVID-19.
Well, I guess the sense is certainly it's
sad that we're at the point, obviously, that we have to bring in all these alternate resources.
10 beds within the mobile health unit have been made available to help ease pressures in acute care hospitals. Robert Burgess, the Senior Director of Emergency Preparedness, says patients will come from hospitals across the GTA.
We understand that as this, as COVID-19 continues to be a challenge for us, that we need to have plans to create capacity and offer opportunities for our partner hospitals to have better flow of their patients. So by moving patients out, we create that flow.
Sunnybrook Field Hospital is located in a parking lot at the north end of its Bayview campus. It has a capacity for up to 84 patient beds. A hospital spokesperson says they are doing their best to create further COVID capacity inside the hospital. Phil Martino, 680 News.
Toronto Public Health is writing up emergency orders to break the chain of infection in a dozen businesses. 680's Mark Douglas joins us with those details.
8 workplaces partially shut down, 4 workplaces fully shut down. Those are the results of the first round of Toronto Public Health using its new Section 22 order.
The purpose of the new order is to separate people who may be infecting each other throughout the duration of the work.
Problem in society we have at the moment is everyone is afraid of making a mistake. Everyone is afraid of the consequence of error. But the greatest error is not to move.
And everything that Dr. warned us not to do, our politicians
something
have
Winston
done.
Churchill
they've
said.
waited too long on every measure, every single measure. I mean, there's never been a plan. There's been zero coordination. Every province is doing its own thing. The federal government's all over the place. And now we are here in a wave, with ICU beds full. Surgeries are being canceled. Still no rapid testing to be found anywhere. How many, of all the millions we're told are in this country, have you ever seen one? We're certainly not doing any tracing to stop the transmission. And only now this weekend did officials start, shutting down the big offenders with COVID outbreaks. And so you read that Amazon was partially shut down because of new cases. Well, they've had cases for months, and a lot of cases. Too little, too late. And this is a company that Dr. Lowe, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, was offered over 5,000 vaccines from the province to get into the essential workers back in mid-March. And he said, no thanks. Who turns that away?
680 News, an investigation is now underway after a fire broke out in a low-rise building in Little Italy. It happened just after 3 this afternoon. Fire crews were called to the building at College in Ossington. One person was trapped on the roof of the building and had to be rescued. He suffered minor injuries. There is a cell tower array on the roof, but fire officials say it's too early to speculate whether the fire was set intentionally.
3 people are in hospital with critical injuries after a stabbing at a high-rise in downtown Hamilton. It happened over the noon hour at an apartment building in the George and Carolyn Streets area. Police say the 3 people know each other, but we're not being told if they are part of the same family.
Which means somebody told the fucking media that it's a family thing. And if the person went to hospital too, if they either physically injured themselves or this could be a whole mental health thing and they're being Form 2. Form 1.
To ride on, and then it spreads from there. You don't have to have 20,000 cases. You need one COVID case to come into the country, and it does its own thing. We've made these mistakes from day one because we wanted to be polite about things. Well, we're paying for that. And India's a world away, sure. But I look at it as a cautionary tale of what's coming our way if these politicians keep playing politics.
Well, we're in agreement on something at least.
The time to act was months ago. And that the military now being called in again is nothing short of an admission of failure. And even worse, India is now on its knees begging the world for help. And what can we do here in Canada? Nothing. Hashtag thoughts and prayers, because we can't even get our own act together. We're a first world country taking vaccines from third world countries. That whole COVAX thing, what are we going to do? Turn around and offer them to India? We can't. We don't have enough for ourselves. And everyone's gleefully posting their vaccine shots, and I'm happy they're getting them. But, I'm sorry to quash your happiness, but you haven't been spared.
And start driving one.
Look how privileged I am. Powerful.
We have a pitiful 2.7% of this country fully vaccinated. That is nothing And yet we've set the bar so low in Canada that we've now become a nation that gets excited because we're doing our best. You know, now we're talking about, well, no, we can mix vaccines. You know, you can get a Pfizer and maybe an AstraZeneca. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, is there any data, evidence, studies done on that? Is it safe? I don't know. I've never seen any studies on it, but we're getting creative here in Canada. Stretch out the shots, mix them up, whatever. Just get some in your arm, and then we'll just say people are vaccinated. It's lunacy. All because those in charge keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And here we are, nonetheless. Very busy show tonight. It will not all be about COVID. We got to talk about a very important issue that's getting ignored. It has everything to do with freedom of speech and the Trudeau government's very aggressive plan to shut down all sorts of social media platforms if it feels it shouldn't be seen. And it's going to get pushed through if people don't start talking about it. We'll also talk about Mercedes Stevenson's latest on the whole General Vance non-investigation and the fact that this government of feminists certainly talk a good game, but then won't investigate or hold anyone to account. So we'll talk about that. On the other side of this break, we will talk with the good doctor, and we'll talk about what has been a real devastating story and a 13-year-old girl dying, but some hope, as Pfizer announces it might have come up with a pill that can treat COVID. So we'll talk about that and the and what it actually means when the military comes in. This is a big.
Some spring showers. We were quite sunny today, but the clouds are building in now, and we'll likely see a few showers through the overnight, late evening overnight. And Tuesday, tomorrow, cloudy, a few sunny breaks, but highs only near 11, 12 degrees, and the average this time of year is 15. We're overcast now, downtown 8 degrees, the overnight low 4.
This is 680 News. More than 1,000 workers at the Port of Montreal are on strike.
The strike began this morning, and the Port Authority says it will mean a total shutdown of all port operations. The workers have been without a contract since December of 2018. They've been on an overtime strike since April 17th and have refused to work weekends since April 18th. Now, the walkout comes after the federal labor minister announced the government would table back to work legislation in the coming days if an agreement is not reached. Philomena Tassi says the government would prefer not to intervene, but it may have no choice given what she called the significant and potentially long-lasting harm to the economy caused by a work stoppage. At the business center,
not through COVID and essential shit, the economy.
Will Dance Plus More for Tomorrow event, so young people across Canada can have better access to a brighter tomorrow. Visit kidshelpphone.ca for more info and sign up now for the Sporting Life virtual 10K run for Camp Ooch this May. Register at sportinglife10k.ca. For more events and fun things to do, visit 640toronto.com and click on your GTA.
Attention passengers, this is your captain speaking. Looks like we have a full cabin today.
Really, Dad?
We're expecting a pretty smooth trip. Our crew will be handing out snacks shortly. Stand by.
Dad.
Safety. FH Health offers same.
Migrants qui se retrouvent sans emploi, la violence conjugale a pris dans la dernière année de nouvelles proportions.
Oh mon Dieu, énormément. On a un groupe de support justement pour les femmes qui sont victimes de violences conjugales, mais aussi il y a la violence conjugale même post-séparation, différentes formes de harcèlement psychologique. Donc la réalité, c'est que beaucoup de femmes sont dans cette situation. Et dans le contexte de la pauvreté, la violence conjugale, il y a beaucoup de femmes qui n'ont pas les moyens carrément de quitter pour trouver un autre.
Won't be safe until transmission is under control. A message from the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario.
With the pandemic and the ability to work from home, it's made so many of us reevaluate our priorities in our lives. Well, I want to introduce you to Alan. He did more than just think about it. He decided it was time to make a move, so he called one of the most trusted names in real estate, Frank Leo and Associates. Now, they met with Alan and listened to his goals, what he wanted for his life. And Alan wasn't concerned with getting the highest price. His goal was peace and tranquility, and he wanted it in less than 30 days. Well, Frank and his team went to work and turned Alan's dreams into reality. They were able to sell his property within his 30-day time frame
and still got $150,000 over asking. Trust Frank Leo and Associates, the #1 RE/MAX team in Toronto and the GTA. Call 416-917-5466. That's 416-917-LION, or go to getleo.com. That's getleo.com and start packing.
Everyday Canadians are buying homes and getting the wrong mortgage rates. Important announcement. If you have a home mortgage closing in the next 90 days, 1.15% 5-year variable rate mortgages are available at butlermortgage.ca. No matter what you were told or what you signed, you can still switch to 1.15% 5-year. No gimmicks, no fees. Standard mortgages at 1.15% 5-year variable. To learn if you qualify, go to butlermortgage.ca now.
License number 12118, high ratio variable rate, APR 1.16%.
Welcome to Cooking Naked. I'm your host, Brenda Stewart, and I'm completely nude right now in my kitchen. I don't usually cook bacon naked, but today I'm cooking with Lou's Kitchen Double Smoked Back Bacon. With over 85% less fat than regular side bacon, it's safe to cook naked. Oh, hey Dave. I didn't think you'd be home so soon.
Hey Brenda, but that's bacon.
Lou's Kitchen, babe. It's the bacon you can cook naked.
Really? Who knew?
Lou's Kitchen Double Smoked Back Bacon. Find it today at Sobeys, Loblaws, Walmart, and Metro. Compared to the national brand's 54-gram regular side bacon.
Start your day with Anthony Robart and Candace Daniel, along with Liam Vu and Marianne Demain. Watch Global News Morning weekdays starting at 6 a.m. and download the Global TV app to get global news for free anytime.
Do you suffer from congestion, sneezing, and itchy eyes in late summer to early fall? Clienta Research is conducting a ragweed allergy study with compensation up to $2,675. Ask about the referral program. Visit at clienta.com.
You're listening to On Point with Alex Pearson on Global News Radio.
You know, the science table advised that we really attend to the hotspots as a way of getting transmission down across the entire province. So we did follow their recommendation with the 25% off the top. They are now recommending 50%, and we're looking at that now because we know that does have a really significant effect in reducing transmission, getting the numbers down, which means fewer people hospitalized and so on.
Ontario Pharmacists Association CEO Justin Bates tells 680 News plans are in the works to avoid an interruption in pharmacy jabs.
We are working collaboratively with the Ontario government on a pilot for the Pfizer vaccine. That pilot, we're hopeful, will be implemented this week.
No word yet on the eligibility criteria for a Pfizer vaccine in pharmacies. India continues to report record-setting case numbers in its latest wave of COVID-19 infections, making it the world's worst COVID hotspot right now.
The visuals coming in from India are heart-wrenching. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Out in the streets, there are makeshift isolation rooms and people desperate for oxygen, the price of which has skyrocketed because of the black market. All as ABC's Jim Longman says the pandemic rages.
The COVID situation in
Didn't
India
they say they were going to hang people for that?
Out of control. They're registering more than 350,000 cases a day. India has been slow to respond to this second surge, and families are fending for themselves.
When it comes to foreign aid for India, last week Federal Procurement Minister Anita Anand said Canada will be sending supplies, but the details are being worked out.
We will stand ready with PPE and ventilators and any items that might be useful.
We know the U.S. has agreed to send raw materials to make vaccines to India. I'm Omen Qureshi.
The federal Conservatives say recent new travel restrictions from the Trudeau government are not enough, and Ottawa needs to crack down harder on international travel to stop the spread of COVID variants.
As our country deals with the spread of several variants, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says it's time to have a real crackdown on travel.
A bit of a crash course. So right now we have over 30 surgeons and anesthetists but they won't be running the ICU, but they'll basically be acting like ICU nurses. And ICU nurses are very, very well trained. So they're getting a crash course, and they should be able to take over those roles. Now, what's being offered from the military is very, very useful as well. These are people who have ICU nursing training, and they'll be able to just get in there and get going in any ICU. environment that they're put into. So all of these are very useful tools. And Humber, for instance, is going to double with ICU beds from about 50 to about 100 beds. And that's going to be very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say just open them up, and it's more than that. You have to actually have the teams to operate the these very specialized equipment and that. And then of course we get the headline that really is quite tragic about this 13-year-old Brampton girl who becomes one of the youngest people in this country to die of COVID. Now there could have been pre-existing conditions, but again, here's a young girl. Her dad's an essential worker, but he was vaccinated.
Yes. It's absolutely tragic. I mean,
she developed a fever, got taken to the hospital, died the same day she got taken to the hospital.
When a child has passed away, I think the most important thing is that we all send our condolences to the family.
So the only thing I'm wondering, does she have sickle cell? Did she have sickle cell? That's all I'm wondering.
Traffic and weather is again.
Your children, just be careful. It's a nasty virus, and it causes a severe pneumonia. And whether she had pre-existing conditions or not, that pneumonia is enough to kill many people. So do be careful.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge for him, and he had a lot, is his wife was in one hospital suffering with COVID, and his concern was, he didn't want to put his daughter in the hospital if she was going to get shipped out somewhere else, and because the symptoms weren't all that strong, maybe she'd be okay at home. But now we're hearing about these cases where it's like people are just they're not waking up, they're dying because they're not going to the hospital.
One by one, we'll start
to start off, and we've seen very rapid progression of I can see very rapid progression of CT scan and X-ray changes. So it can move very quickly in a patient, because remember, this is a lot of what's happening is inflammatory reaction as opposed to infection. Infection can spread very
kids
quickly,
develop
but
vascular inflammatory something condition.
Can really start to affect the lungs quite
severe vascular inflammatory syndrome or something like that.
There's nothing at all, and it's 100% tragic. We're learning more about the new variants every day, and it's just awful that this happened to him and his family.
Yeah, it's really very sad. I want to play you some audio, and it was something I heard over the weekend on one of the political shows. It was on CTV, actually, and it's the head of NACI.
Temperature, and that's the pattern. We're wrapping up April with some cooler air.
Wash makes it pretty clear that, if you can get an mRNA shot, take that. Take a listen.
If you're in an area where there's tons of COVID and everybody's going to the ICU, to me it's easy. You take the first vaccine that comes up. But for somebody who would live in an area where there's no COVID, where that person never leaves home, and that person knows that based on their age group or priorities, they would have access to an mRNA vaccine next week, I think it's reasonable for them to wait.
On April, suffered a work.
It's also Guide Dog Day. Wednesday, April 28th is Guide Dog Day.
Talking again about balancing risks and benefits. We know that there's a higher efficacy for the mRNA vaccines. We also know that the AstraZeneca keeps you out of the hospital and keeps you out of the ICU and keeps you from dying. So what she's saying makes perfect sense, and I don't think it's inconsistent with the message. If you're in an area that has high levels of COVID, such as the Humber Regional area, the Downsview area, Jane and Fitch, just get a vaccine. Your life can literally depend on it. But again, when she talks about the mRNA, it's obviously the better one of the two, but remember that all vaccines are equally efficacious at keeping you out of the ICU and keeping you from dying. So where it really counts,
sugar, water, soybeans, salt,
the same.
Sweet potatoes.
And Pfizer testing a pill that could be the first test-at-home treatment, and they're doing some testing. It'll run for 145 days using 60 volunteers. But this could be a real game changer if this goes through.
Well, especially for anyone who holds Pfizer stock.
No kidding. I never seem to get the right stock, but nonetheless. I also don't have the vaccine.
The common cold is caused by a number of different viruses.
No, it's not. It's caused by the coronavirus.
The
coronavirus family.
Cold every year. And what they're talking about isn't just a cure for COVID, it's a cure for the common cold. So it'll be very interesting to see how this develops over time.
No kidding.
No kidding. Did you not understand this vaccine is intended for what you just called the common cold? COVID and the common cold are the same damn thing. You're not understanding the situation you're facing.
This is Global News Radio.
6:88 time, 6:56.
So the population of hosts has to increase to a certain amount to have a genetic variation to allow the virus to mutate and so forth, to allow it to evolve and progress in terms of multiply to this degree. This thing goes through every animal it meets.
Pandemic took hold. A new report from rentals.ca found the average Toronto rent price was still down 19% year on year in March, but was up over February. The average rent went from $2,007 in February to $2,021 in March, and rentals.ca says that could be a signal that demand is starting to pick up. It's also, though, experts say possible that landlords are anticipating kind of a return to normal after COVID-19 and maybe holding units empty.
Landlords always act like they're gods. Why is it landlords are the only people guaranteed an increase in their income every year?
S&P 500 was up 7 points. The NASDAQ
by the
up
government
121. The Dow was lower, fell 61 points to close below 34K. Tesla reported earnings after the closing bell, and top and bottom line beat. Tesla reporting its 7th straight profitable quarter, pulling in $438 million on its bottom line, selling 185,000 cars. CN Rail reported earnings as well, a weaker top and bottom line result for the company, indicating that it's hopeful for a recovery in the North American market this year, and had good things to say as far as guidance was concerned. The TSX headed higher today, up 68 points to 19,170. The favorite stock of the Reddit Wall Street Bets crowd is on a tear again. GameStop up almost 12% to $168 at the close, and it topped $190 in the after-hours trade. Canadian dollar surging up to 80.66 cents US, and the top stories are next on 680 News.
When you lease a 2021 Honda CR-V, you're saying yes to Ontario, because our assembly line is in Ontario. During a Honda Checker Flag event, lease the 2021 CR-V LX from $82 weekly at 2.99% and zero down, including $750 Honda bonus.
With fresh, fun, and delicious recipes for every palate in your household, we're making mealtime easier and safer than ever before.
Employment only. See HondaOntario.com.
City News is everywhere. Not just covering stories, experiences. On our streets, in our neighborhoods, everywhere. From wherever it happens to wherever you are, this is City News everywhere. Nightly at 6 and 11 on City TV, or visit citynews.ca anytime.
You'll always be the first to know.
Breaking news when it happens.
I don't know how far back this goes. I remember before they finished the Dufferin Jog, Dufferin and King, where you can just drive straight north now. You couldn't do that before. Back in the 80s, our streets, our walls, it was spray painted up on the shit. It was like 1989. We've been doing this a long time.
And 8, we're going down to an overnight low of 4 with some showers, and then showers to start the day, possibly 7 degrees tomorrow morning. The News Watch never stops. 680 News is CFTR AM. Toronto, it's 7 o'clock.
Toronto's #1 for
Ontario's with elbow bones.
This is 680 News.
It's Monday, April 26th. Good evening. I'm Scott Brett.
I'm Sljana Timinzik. Here are the top stories right now.
Ottawa is sending in the military and Red Cross at the request of the Ford government as the crunch continues in Ontario's ICUs.
New case numbers are slightly down in Ontario, but the top doctor cautions now is not the time to get complacent, with hospitalizations and ICU admissions rising. With no beds left within the hospital, Sunnybrook's mobile health unit accepts its first patient.
A dozen Toronto workplaces with COVID either closed or partially closed by public health.
We do so very, very carefully.
Stopping the spread with Section 22. We'll bring you the Raptors in.
ICU nurses, medics, and up to 3 mobile medical assistance teams could be sent to Ontario in the coming days as pressure builds on frontline workers in critical care.
The stress and tensions are immense. And it's one thing if it's for a period of time, like a few hours. If it goes into longer hours, it goes into extended hours, it goes day after day.
But that pressure is something the province knew was coming for weeks. It's why the opposition says the request should have been made sooner.
The government's definitely been dragging its feet. We all know that the Red Cross was being lined up by the federal government a week and a half ago, 10 days ago. In the meantime, our ICUs are in crisis.
Well, leaders from all levels of government are offering condolences to the family of a 13-year-old Brampton girl that lost her life to COVID-19. At her home on Thursday, Emily Villegas died after showing symptoms of the virus for a week. The girl's father, an essential warehouse worker, attempted to care for her at home rather than admit her to hospital over fears that the overwhelmed system wouldn't be able to treat her. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown says the city has been heavily impacted by the pandemic.
So it kills a 13-year-old in a week, it kills a 30-year-old in a day. Okay. I like the wind chill factor. We got to figure that out.
Public health and essential worker.
Every generation of lab, the potentially hybridized DNA that this virus hasn't interacted with before. And also, of course, the potential for mutations, variation, like genes that didn't come from the mother or the father. They're out of place or whatever. The virus doesn't know how to deal with the newer generation as well as the older generation. Remember, this virus has infected these 70, 60, 70, 80-year-old people have met this virus 50 or 100 times before in their life.
On the recommendation from its COVID
these kids, probably not.
Cases. Well, just under 70,000 vaccine doses were administered in Ontario.
Every virus you were able to fight off, you eliminated a weak strain of the coronavirus.
Within city limits will be affected at least partially by shutdowns due to COVID-19 outbreaks. City officials announced last week that it would be taking the step of closing businesses that have 5 or more cases to help stop community spread. Global's Dave Woodard has more.
Only some of the closures are complete ones.
There will be 4 full closures.
That means that 8 workplaces will have partial close downs, according to Toronto's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Eileen Davila.
Partially closed down.
She says the reason behind that is that some outbreaks are very localized and don't affect full.
The Newfoundland Premier, who's a doctor, and the federal government says it will provide airlift support for that Newfoundland team to get to Ontario. I'm Richard Southern.
The province reporting a 3rd case of extremely rare blood clotting linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. The update comes as the chief medical officer warns that this wave of infection shouldn't be taken lightly. 680's Karen Seolan joins us live with those details. Karen?
Scott, provincial health officials today say it looks like we're making some progress with new cases slightly down, but Dr. David Williams cautions admissions to hospitals and ICUs are at their highest since the start of the pandemic.
That is the delayed metric that will continue to accrue, unfortunately, over the next week or two, until we turn that one around.
Case rates, death rates, and hospitalizations among those over 60 are coming down. Evidence Williams says that vaccines work. This is Ontario reports a 3rd case of a blood clot in a 70-year-old man who got an AstraZeneca shot. He is currently in hospital, but Williams says the AstraZeneca blood clot risk is still extremely rare, with about 650,000 doses given out across the province. Now, if you've had your first dose of any vaccine, Dr. Barbara Yaffe says it's going to take patience to get out of this 3rd wave.
The bottom line is assume you need to take all the measures, even if you've had 1 dose.
Reporting live, I'm Karen Seolan.
Sunnybrook has reached the point where there are no beds available within the hospital. 680's Phil Martino reports its mobile health unit has now accepted its first patient. She joins us live with the details. Phil.
So, Jana, Sunnybrook's Field Hospital is set up in a parking lot at the north end of its Bayview campus. It has capacity for up to 84 patient beds. Today marks the first day one of those beds will be used. Deborah Carew with Clinical Operations says the mobile health unit will care for patients who are recovering or who have recovered from COVID-19.
In general, we're looking at having about a 3 to 5 day length of stay for the patients that are transitioning between acute care and the MHU before going to home or rehab.
Beds within the mobile health unit have been made available to help ease pressure.
Remember when they used to prescribe smoking and put the TB patients out on the porch all day long? There's photos of that. TB patients all lined up on these, what are they, Muskoka chairs or whatever, all wrapped up in blankets, but they're outside. And they used to prescribe tobacco to dry out the lungs. Doesn't quite work that way, but.
This is On Point with
12 businesses are being temporarily closed by Toronto Public Health amid COVID-19 outbreaks. It comes after similar moves by Peel Region over the weekend. Here's 680's Mark Douglas.
A dozen workplaces in Toronto have been served notice that they have to either partially or fully close because they've got COVID under their roof.
We do so. We will talk with Colonel Michelle Drapeau on that. We're also going to dive into a piece of legislation the Trudeau government is trying to push through that will give government the power to remove whatever content it wants from social media, even your kids' TikTok. It's actually crazy that it's not getting more attention than it is. And we'll also dive into the issue of a very successful online recipe, Epicurious, if you've cooked then you
benefits insofar as we can start to more rapidly resume regular activities, including regular business operations as soon as possible.
I'm Mark Douglas.
This portion of the news brought to you by Butler Mortgage. As of tomorrow, York Region is opening up thousands of new COVID-19 vaccination appointments to people 35 and over in a fifth neighborhood in Vaughan. It is the L4H postal code. 25,000 spots are available. Pregnant women in any part of the region of any age are also eligible. Booking opens at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Appointments are required. Walk-ins won't be allowed. York Region says it's still dealing with a limited vaccine supply and will offer more appointments once more doses are available.
3 people suffered life-threatening stab wounds in an attack that happened at a high-rise near Bay and George Streets in Hamilton over the noon hour. Police say the suspect is among the 3 people hurt, but they're not telling us much else.
I don't know exactly the weapon that was involved. The information that we do have was it was a stabbing report, but I haven't had confirmation as to the weapon or what was used.
Investigators say the 3 people knew each other, but they're not revealing that relationship.
An investigation is underway after a fire broke out on the 3rd floor of a low-rise building in Little Italy. Fire crews were called just after 3 this afternoon to the scene of the 3-alarm fire at Ossington and College. One person had to be rescued.
With as many people as possible. Today, for example, my gosh, from the day the moment I connected online till about 5 minutes ago, I've been speaking with people, emailing with people, answering questions. That's great. Employment law issues.
All possibilities related to both the origin of the fire, the cause, and any circumstances surrounding to the spread and the minor injuries that have been reported.
There are road closures in the area.
When it comes to rapid testing here in Canada, it appears supply is not the problem. New stats from Health Canada show the federal government has delivered nearly 42 million rapid tests to the provinces through the pandemic, but the provinces have only deployed 11.5 million, and of those, only 1.7 million have actually been used. There have been growing calls for more rapid testing initiatives to help prevent workplace spread of COVID-19, which has become a big problem in the 3rd wave. However, workplace testing isn't mandatory. Many provinces still require healthcare professionals to administer the nasal swab tests, which is difficult given the strain on healthcare resources during the 3rd wave. Coming up in 30 seconds, we'll check on the price at the pumps.
This is 680.
What happened to the test where you spit in a cup? They tell you everything about all the women in your bloodline going back 1,000 years, but they can't do this. That's crazy. That's crazy.
What you signed, you can still switch to 1.15% 5-year. No gimmicks, no fees. Standard mortgages at 1.15% 5-year variable. To learn if you qualify, go to butlermortgage.ca now.
License number 12118, high ratio variable rate, APR 1.16%. Now the 680 News gas price update. Enpro says price of gas will not change at midnight, holding at $1.27.9 a liter.
If you're on the hunt for a new truck, we'll make it easy for you. Because when it comes to performance, style, and capability, there's only one choice: Ram. During the month of Ram, you get 20% off.
C'est intéressant que vous, Pierre-Antoine, Viviane et Christian, mais il y a Kate Crawford qui vient tout juste.
Good price, the perfect time.
It's 3 teams of specialized medical officers.
You are. Moms are the rock, the glue, the heart and soul of any family unit. Don't let Mother's Day go by without showing Mom how much she means with a pair of light gold Tears of Joy earrings from Spence for $1.99. As priceless as Mom is, she's more than one. Spence Diamonds. Find us in Vaughan, Scarborough, and Mississauga.
680 News Time, 7-11.
Traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Carly Donahue.
Right now, out on the major highways, everything's pretty much moving up to speed. We don't have any collisions or delays throughout the GTA right now, but there is a bit of construction and there's a stalled vehicle. The stall is on the eastbound Gardner approaching Spadina. The right shoulder's blocked off. There's a tow truck on scene, so it's not causing any slowdowns, but it is a visual distraction. Watch out for that. Toronto bound on the QEW over the Burlington Skyway. They've now started to set up the construction, so there's a right lane closed. I anticipate there's going to be more lanes closed, but I'll let you know. And northbound on the 410, the ramp to the eastbound 407 partially blocked off on the right lane, and that is due to maintenance. Your next report's at 7:21 with a look at the forecast. Here's Denise Andriacci.
Mainly sunny today with a guaranteed high of 10 degrees. And yes, that is cool and below seasonal for this time of year. Chance of showers overnight, lows near 4. We can hang on to a bit of wet weather tomorrow morning. We are mostly cloudy for tomorrow and another cool day. Although some parts of southwestern Ontario will begin to warm up, we can't quite get into that warm sector here in the GTA. So we'll still be cool near 12 degrees. The guaranteed high today is 10.
Downtown Toronto, overcast and 8 degrees. This is 680 News.
Opposition leaders want to see stricter international travel measures in order to stop the further importation of COVID variants. 680's Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with more.
Federal Conservatives say the Trudeau government is failing at the border, and they suggest all international flights be banned in order to get a better handle on the variants. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is not opposed to the idea.
I'm open to whatever is in the best interest of Canadians and what will work to keep us safe. And so if that includes some travel restrictions or increased travel restrictions, I'm prepared to look at the evidence.
Last week, the Fed shut down all flights from India and Pakistan as that region sees a record spread of the virus, but Conservatives call it a half measure. Since last spring, non-essential travel to Canada has been barred, but there are exemptions for essential travel. The opposition claims mandatory testing and quarantines have failed. Federal data shows international travel or contact with a traveler are directly linked to less than 2% of COVID cases in our country. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Your headlines are next.
Share more with family with CIBC Global Money Transfer. We know achieving your goals in Canada happens with the support of family.
From my window here, I can see a plane that's about to touch down at Pearson right now. I don't know where it's from.
For today. And now, get $50 back on your first transfer with promo code GMT50. It's our way to share too. Conditions and CIBC foreign exchange rates apply.
Mazda wants you to discover the drive. Discover why Mazda 3 is the Automobile Journalists Association of Canada's 2021 Canadian Car of the Year. Discover performance with an available turbocharged engine in the CX-5 or CX-30. And discover luxury with CX-9 sophisticated 7-passenger seating. Right now, receive 0.5% purchase financing on select models and up to a $1,000 Mazda bonus on select B Mazdas. Contact your local Mazda dealer or visit Mazda.ca for details.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
Cloudy in downtown Toronto, sitting at 8 degrees. Good evening, I'm Scott Burnett.
I'm still Janet Timmons. Here are the top stories right now.
Ottawa sending members of the Canadian military and the Red Cross to help in Ontario's critical care units. That at the request of the Ford government. Ontario has a record 877 people.
The province asked for help from the military. The feds can't order the Red Cross to do anything. It's two separate things.
To temporarily close down a dozen businesses experiencing COVID-19 outbreaks. 8 will only need to close partially. 4 will be shut down completely for 10 days. And Ontario reporting a third case of an extremely rare blood clot in a 70-year-old man who received the AstraZeneca vaccine. He is now in hospital receiving treatment.
Time for 680 Sports.
And from Sportsnet 590 The Fan, good evening, George Russick.
The Raptors are playing their first of 5 games in 7 days tonight at home in Tampa against Cleveland. No Gary Trent Jr. for Toronto due to a leg contusion. You can hear the game live on Sportsnet 590 The Fan starting at 7:30. The Raptors are 2 games back of the red-hot Washington Wizards for that final play-in spot in the Eastern Conference, and right now they're about to tip it off at home against San Antonio. The Maple Leafs have the night off with plenty of action on the go from the NHL, including Cole Caulfield making his NHL debut for the Habs in Calgary. And right now, the Flames in Montreal tied up at 1s. 2 minutes to go in the first period. Elsewhere on the go from the NHL, scoreless early first in Ottawa between the Senators and Canucks. Ditto for the Blues and Avalanche in St. Louis. Sports at 15 and 45 past every hour. Or anytime at sportsnet.ca. Sunday.
Then a good old...
Without the concern of being punished. So when an employer tries to penalize someone for enforcing their rights, we call that a reprisal. That's illegal, and an employer that does that could be liable to damages, potentially even may have to reinstate an employee that it let go. So you have a right, and we'll give you some examples when we get into some specifics, to enforce your rights, to stand up for your rights, to ask questions of your employer about your rights, to make demands about your rights. You cannot be punished, penalized, fired, threatened. None of that can happen. That's what we call a reprisal.
So some common examples, I guess, weekly or every couple of weeks in your firm?
So thankfully, employees understand that they have these rights. And oftentimes what I see is people asking questions about overtime. Wait a second, you're not paying me overtime. You need to pay me overtime. Or you haven't calculated my statutory holiday pay properly. So if you
common examples that you do every couple of weeks in your firm?
So thankfully, employees understand that they have these rights. And oftentimes what I see is people asking questions about overtime. Wait a second, you're not paying me overtime. You need to pay me overtime.
We know, Chomo, we know. Jesus fucking Christ.
So if you
because you can't do all these scripts at once.
And you want to get paid your overtime, your employer has to pay you what's owed to you. And even if it's determined that no.
Moron. Yeah, we don't care, Chomo. We don't care. We know you're the #1 viewer. We know you scream our name at us and tell us that means we know who you are. Yes, keep it up, Chomo. Keep it up. Big white stripes across the screen all day long. That's so scary. Because I'm 3 years old still, you fucking moron.
Investigate the harassment.
How fucking stupid are you? Does that mean your brain's about to break, dog? Go have a heart attack or a stroke off your meth pipe, dog.
E já voltamos à conversa do passado ao presente.
So this will be World Today.
In the press, there has not been much of an update, and I did read the criticism in the Indian press of the Indian government rather.
From 17 countries. The exploration of astrospace should be a course that requires global cooperation, as we live in a community with a shared future. It requires global cooperation to push forward the development of astronautical technology and for mankind to move to other planets.
Officials say China is also willing to cooperate with more countries in exploring the moon. China's Chang'e 5 lunar probe has accomplished a series of technological breakthroughs, including its first lunar surface sampling, liftoff from the moon, and docking in lunar orbit. More than 1,700 grams of lunar soil samples were brought back to the Earth by the return capsule of the mission. But China's National Space Administration Chief Zhang Kejian says they have so far only analyzed the sample's radioactive background and the size of its components compared to that on Earth's. He adds that more in-depth analysis is also necessary, which requires global cooperation.
We must complete the analysis to determine whether the sample is safe or not. For now, our research on the lunar soil is preliminary. But in the future, we're especially looking forward to cooperation between scientists at home and abroad who have in-depth understanding of lunar soil samples.
Zhang adds that China will conduct more international cooperation to further develop the aerospace industry.
We have some plans and schedules. We've also set rules for the management of the lunar soil samples and announced the rules to the public. We really welcome scientists from other countries, as well as our Chinese scientists, to apply for the use of the lunar soil samples, because it supports our belief in promoting the progress of the aerospace industry and humanity's.
Lunar lines.
Heated pleas from gun rights advocates and some members of the High Court itself, the court majority has declined to make any further decisions about how far the states may go in regulating gun rights. Now, however, the court will review a New York law that requires individuals to get a license to carry a concealed gun outside the home. The licenses are restricted to those going hunting or to target practice and those who can demonstrate a need for self-protection, like a bank messenger carrying money. Those challenging the law contend that any law-abiding citizen should be able to get a permit to carry a concealed weapon outside the home. New York is one of just 8 states that limit the concealed carrying of guns, but many of those states have huge populations. Indeed, they account for some 90 million people. Research indicates that if concealed carry permits were easy to get, roughly 10% of adults in those states would likely be carrying guns. In Los Angeles County, for instance, with a population of 10 million people, estimates are that some 800,000 would get permits to carry concealed firearms, in contrast to the fewer than 500 people who do right now.
This is really the next frontier in Second Amendment cases.
Jacob Charles, executive director of the Center for Firearms Law at Duke Law School, says the court will likely be moving gun rights beyond the home.
Do you get to bring it anywhere? Are there restrictions on where you can bring it? And what kind of authority do states have to make that carrying contingent on things like background checks, training requirements?
The court's 2008 landmark gun rights decision was by a 5-4 vote. And with the addition of 3 Trump appointees, the court's current 6-3 conservative majority is likely to give gun rights advocates plenty of running room. Indeed, even without the Chief Justice's vote, there would likely be 5 conservatives willing to dismantle many of the nation's gun regulations. The court will not hear the gun case until next term. Today it began hearing the last full week of arguments for this term. Front and center was a case involving rich activists and their anonymous donations to tax-exempt charitable organizations. At issue was a California law, similar to laws in some other states, that required tax-exempt nonprofits to file with the state a confidential list of their large donors, a copy, in fact, of the list that they file annually with the IRS. The state maintains that the information is needed to ferret out fraud and self-dealing in charitable organizations. The Americans for Prosperity Foundation, backed by the conservative Koch brothers, refused to comply with the state law, contending that it would violate their First Amendment right to freedom of association and that it would subject them to harassment from those who disagree with their political views. The case is seen as particularly important because if the court rules for the donors, it could cast a cloud of doubt over public disclosure requirements for campaign contributions and contributors. Justice Breyer focused on that question today.
I'd like to know what you think of the argument raised in several of the MIT briefs anyway, that this case is really a stalking horse for campaign finance disclosure laws. What's the difference?
There were no good answers to that question, nor were there great answers when several justices noted that California had initially, though inadvertently, experienced computer problems with keeping the donor list secret.
Lowered, telling his colleagues, quote, "I am going to infect you all with the coronavirus," end quote. As a result, 8 people were directly infected. Police say those people infected another 14. Inez de la Quatera, ABC News, at the Foreign Desk.
And ratings for last night's Oscars ceremony plummeted.
The Nielsen Company reports the audience for the Academy Awards was 9.85 million viewers, based on preliminary estimates.
One person infected 8, and 8 infected 14. Oh my God, that's almost 2.0 reproduction rate on the second one.
The Grammys, the Golden Globes, and the Emmys all saw record low audiences in the past year. I'm Archie Zaraletta.
Business News is next.
680 News Talk.
Hello, I am water.
And I am Earth, and we are just made for each other.
I come down as rain and hit on earth.
Together we make mud, sweet, beautiful mud.
Some find us challenging.
While all those Subarus
We
with
then
symmetrical full-time
appreciate the technological ingenuity, and then think about the kindness of the man who made it possible. Chuck Geschke, back at the dawn of desktop computers, he co-founded Adobe Systems. Geschke died earlier this month at age 81 from cancer.
Now, like any other Silicon Valley genius, Geschke will certainly be remembered for his accomplishments, but maybe as much for the ethos that was the cornerstone for Adobe. Along with his co-founder, John Warnock, Geschke insisted.
The first principle that John and I agreed on immediately when we started Adobe is that we wanted to build a company that we personally would like to work for. We figured if we'd like to work for it, all the other nerds that we knew would like to work for it too.
That's Chuck Geschke speaking in 2011 at his alma mater, Carnegie Mellon University. Now, he came from a family of printing professionals, including
pandemic pay to frontline workers, small pay bonuses that most of
The 60 mass immunization campaigns in 50 countries have been put on hold, putting around 228 million people at risk from preventable serious diseases. More than half of the affected countries are in Africa. The U.S. Census Bureau announced yesterday that the country now has a population topping 331 million, marking the country's slowest growth rate since the 1930s. Dr. Ron S. Jarman is acting director of the Bureau.
According to the 2020 census, the number of people living in the United States was 331,449,281. This represents an increase of 7.4% over the official population count from the 2010 census. This population growth rate is lower than the previous growth rate of 9.7% between the 2000 and 2010 censuses. In fact, the growth rate from 2010 to 2020 is the second slowest in U.S. history.
Demographers said the United States may be entering an era of substantially lower population.
It was founded in 1982.
Which has a different understanding of US, different understanding of European Union. So this designation of genocide formally by an American president is not surprising. So I think beyond these details, we are now facing a paradigmatic change that will turn in US. And of course it will affect
the French record high was up 7 points. The NASDAQ at a record as well, up 121. And the Canadian dollar at a multi-year high, 80.64 cents US. Top stories next on 680 News.
Rough driving conditions can chip your windshield in the blink of an eye. At Speedy Glass, we can quickly fix that chip before it turns into a crack. Hi, I'm Keith at Speedy Glass, and my team and I use unique cutting-edge technology to get you road-ready fast. Our work comes with a lifetime warranty, and it may even be free for you if you're insured. So don't ignore that chip. Book your appointment today at speedyglass.ca.
To get her that severance, for that she can...
If you need a vehicle, we're here to help. The Performance Auto Group Pre-Owned Demo event is on now until April 30th. Select from hundreds of company demonstrator vehicles across 22 brands. Pay no freight fees, pay no PDI fees. Save up to $25,000 in discounts and enjoy rates from 0% on select models. The Performance Auto Group Pre-Owned Demo event on now until April 30th by appointment only and online. Performance.ca/demo for details.
Downtown Toronto right now, we've got a mostly cloudy sky sitting at 8 degrees. For Janice Tominzik, I'm Scott Burnett. Have a great evening. It's 7:30.
Toronto's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
Good evening, it's Monday, April 26th. I'm Caitlin Lee. And I'm Michelle Morton. Here's what's making news this hour. The Ford government calling in the Canadian military for help, which, after they rejected an offer for help from the Red Cross just 10 days ago.
No, they didn't. The federal government offered to somehow get the Red Cross to volunteer to vaccinate people without having any vaccines to give them. That's what happened. He didn't officially reject the offer. He said it's a fucking joke.
The mobile health unit has accepted its first patient.
The city of Toronto starts wielding its new powers to shut down workplaces where COVID is present.
There will be 4.
Those are not new powers. Those are not new powers.
The Raptors and Cavs about to tip it off from Tampa, and we'll fill you in on what's going on the frozen water. Sports at 45.
Tesla reports its 7th straight quarterly profit. We'll have the details. TSX revved up. The S&P and NASDAQ at records. Business at 50 cents.
It's not surprising considering it's subsidized by child labor, slave labor, unpaid child labor.
And then another one, less hours but more money. So it shows they think the less hours for more money. Then at the last second, they dumped me because they have the right to cancel the agreement at any time, as per the agreement I signed, a waiver, if you will. And I was wondering, how can I pay a lawyer such as yourself to help me out, or
so they moved over.
Number 2, even if I worked for a couple of months or weeks, how can I afford to pay you? And be all this fancy stuff about getting reinstated.
He's going to say that the employer ends up having to pay damages if they win in court. That'll cover it.
In your own home with a massage chair from Relaxacare. Choose a huge selection of full body and luxury models. Visit relaxacare.ca. Now with a look at the forecast, here's Denise Andriacci. Mostly cloudy with some showers through the overnight. It was a sunny day today. That cloud builds now and will stay mostly cloudy through the day tomorrow as well. A few sunny breaks. Highs only near 11 degrees. The average high this time of year, 15. Your overnight low tonight, 4. In Toronto, it is 7 degrees and cloudy at Toronto Pearson. It's also 7 degrees, only mostly cloudy. 680 News Time, 7:32. They refused an offer to bring in the Red Cross for help, but now the Ford government is asking for aid from the Canadian Armed Forces. 680's Richard Southern reports it comes as the number of those hospitalized with COVID-19 in Ontario reach a critical high.
The Canadian military is on the way to help out Ontario's overcrowded ICUs, and it's at the request of the Ford government, which just 10 days ago rejected an offer of help from the federal government. But boy, things have gotten much worse in hospitals over the past 10 days, and now we've learned that the Canadian military is deploying 3 multi-purpose teams to Ontario. These will be nursing officers and other medical technicians trained to work in hospital ICUs. Solicitor General Sylvia Jones.
And I thank the federal government for approving it.
Other news out of Queen's Park today. Health Minister Elliott says the cabinet is reviewing a recommendation by the science table to allocate more vaccine doses to hotspot areas.
We're studying it very carefully right now.
I'm Richard Southern.
The spread of COVID-19 variants in Ontario remain a concern, but the province's top doctors says daily case numbers could be reaching a plateau. It comes as Ontario reports a 3rd case of an extremely rare blood clot related to the AstraZeneca shot. 680's Karen Seolan joins us live with the very latest. Karen.
Caitlin, Chief Medical Officer Dr. David Williams says the slowing growth of new cases may indicate the stay-at-home order is having an effect.
This is just a few days, and I don't want to be overly optimistic because you can dip down and go back up again. We cannot take our foot off the brake.
Admissions to hospitals and ICUs have climbed to another pandemic high, but among those 60 and older, hospitalizations, case rates, and death rates are coming down. Dr. Barbara Yaffe pointing to the power of vaccines and restrictions.
If you had 1 dose, excellent.
but keep doing all the same public health measures.
Ontario is reporting a third case of a blood clot, this time in a man in his 70s, now in hospital, who recently got an AstraZeneca shot. But Williams emphasizes the odds are still extremely rare.
We talk about 1 in 100,000, 1 in 250,000 of the doses given.
Reporting live, I'm Karen Seolin.
The field hospital set up at Sunnybrook's Bayview campus has accepted its first patient. 6 Cities' Phil Martino joins us live with more. Phil. Caitlin, Sunnybrook's field hospital is located in the parking lot at the north end of its Bayview campus. Robert Burgess, a senior director of emergency preparedness, says the mobile health unit is a system resources, so patients will come from all over the GTA, not just from Sunnybrook.
So what he just said isn't true. The numbers are actually worse than that because they're still vaccinating people, and it takes 3 weeks or some shit for you to get that blood clot.
Our mobile health unit has capacity for up to 84 patient beds. Now, 10 beds within the mobile health unit have been made available to help ease pressures in acute care hospitals. Deborah Carew with Clinical Operations says the field hospital will accept patients who are recovering or have recovered from COVID-19.
What we're hoping to be able to do is take some patients from the acute care centers to be able to allow them to have more space for the more ill COVID patients that are coming in.
Hospital officials say they cannot discuss the field hospital's first patient, but will say the patient is comfortable. So Martino, 680 News.
A dozen businesses in Toronto are facing some sort of closure due to the COVID-19 outbreaks. It's part of efforts from Toronto Public Health to curb the spread of the virus in the workplace. 680's Mark Douglas has the details.
The City of Toronto is making good on its promise to shut down workplaces where COVID is a danger to the workers. Dr. Eileen Davila announcing the results of their first go with their new Section 22 order.
There will be 8 partial closures in instances where the findings indicate the entire operation does not need to shut down. There will be 4 full closures.
Closures are for 10 days each.
Well,
Dr. Davila says
a lack of trust between Moscow and Washington, because when Moscow is receiving, escalating, increasing hostilities from Washington in the form of financial sanctions and diplomatic expulsions, why should Russia choose to work with the U.S. on issues where cooperation is theoretically possible? Because, I think the reality is really that provocation towards Moscow is more likely to nurture a kind of perception on the part of Moscow that it is being cornered by the Americans and their Western allies, and as a result, it will more likely than not choose to retaliate on issues where retaliation is possible, if what happened in Syria can provide any guidance.
According to a foreign policy advisor of Putin, a summit between Putin and Biden is likely to take place as early as June. In the meantime, Moscow has announced that thousands of Russian troops deployed near the Ukraine border would return to their bases. So how do you read these new developments?
Well, I think, just now we talk about the stance of Washington, this combination of contain and engagement. I think on the part of Moscow, there also seems to be a combination of...
This afternoon, damage to the 3rd floor was significant. 1 person had to be rescued and suffered minor injuries. There are road closures in the area.
680 News Time, 7:38. 3 people have been rushed to hospital following a stabbing in a downtown apartment building. Hamilton police say the stabbing happened in a unit near Bay Street and George Street. All 3 people are in critical condition. Police say one of the 3 injured is the suspect, and all 3 were reportedly known to each other. There is a heavy police presence in the area. Your gas price update is next. This is 680 News.
Tim was a man who was home.
A letter, or maybe even a
pastor.
We don't really. So Mia Abu Jamal was a journalist and also a MOVE supporter. He is in prison right now for the 1981 shooting death of a Philadelphia police officer, but MOVE and others maintain that Mumia is innocent.
is Layla A. Jones. She's a reporter with member station WHYY, and Billy Penn in Philadelphia. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you. To Arizona now, where aid groups warn of a growing humanitarian crisis along the border. The number of unauthorized migrants apprehended is on pace to hit a 20-year high. The Biden administration has pledged $110 million to border towns to help deal with the impact of that surge. NPR's Kirk Siegler spoke with aid groups who say that's a fraction of what's needed.
At a migrant shelter run by nonprofits near the Phoenix airport, a woman cries softly while her partner talks to a relative on his phone. There are snacks and donated toys laid out on a folding table outside. The couple was just released from detention. Inside, a scene of controlled chaos and a few looks of relief.
We are oftentimes some of the first friendly faces that they'll see here on the U.S. side of the border because
Stanford Prescott is one of just a few paid staff here. This International Rescue Committee shelter relies on up to 300 volunteers a week. They do everything from cook meals, make beds, book plane tickets. Most of these migrants are trying to get asylum, so they're being allowed to stay in the U.S. while they await court dates. Across the busy room, volunteers in PPE are even administering COVID tests.
our work here is primarily funded by private donors, not by government donors. And there is a need for government funding to help make this work.
What's happening here in Phoenix is not unique. Ev Mead is an immigration expert at the University of San Diego.
It's volunteer civil society groups who are providing most of the humanitarian aid and all of the related triage. And that's true on the U.S. side of the border, and it's also true on the Mexican side of the border.
And there's a very specific reason for this on the U.S. side, Mead says. It goes back 20 years to 9/11.
When people enter the United States and they're not, on the face of it, authorized to be here, the system is really built to detain, prosecute, and deport them. And the service side of that has really diminished and degraded over the years.
Now NGOs and local leaders want help providing things like transportation and basic food and shelter. And they say there's an existing template that says
30 millimeters
unaccompanied minors caught on this side of the border.
Low tonight, 4 degrees. In Toronto, it's 7 degrees with light rain showers at Toronto Pearson, cloudy skies sitting at 7 degrees. 680 News Time, 7:42.
The province is planning to crack down on unsafe drivers by increasing penalties for speeding and stunt driving. Transportation Minister Carolyn Mulrooney says the aim of the new legislation is clear.
This legislation sends a clear message to drivers. Driving is a privilege, and those who threaten the safety of others have no place on our roads.
And the Ford government introduced a bill this afternoon that would lengthen license suspensions and increase vehicle impoundment times. The legislation would also drop the threshold for stunt driving from 50 kilometers an hour over the posted speed limit to 40 over on roads with a posted speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour or less. The government says stunt driving charges have steadily increased since 2015 and spiked dramatically in 2020 due to the pandemic, reducing the amount of traffic on Ontario roads. Your headlines and sports coming up.
That's not what happened. The police are too busy and people are all collectively not getting out of the way of emergency vehicles. So all that's happened is you forced the issue. They can't police everything all the time. Everybody knows that. How come they keep reinforcing that? It's a privilege, not a right. How come Indians aren't allowed to use tractors on their farms? We're allowed to have guns, but Hudson's Bay isn't allowed to sell bullets.
China's digital economy is currently...
When the gunpowder comes from China,
China is extremely good at the infrastructure and the outward facing. So when companies are doing something, they're very focused on this kind of customer experience, which is very good. But very little attention is paid to the employee experience. So you're not seeing the kind of gains that you would ever else. But if you look, Forbes did a study on this earlier this year. China leads in almost all categories except bringing its employees along in terms of this kind of digital experience, making sure that they have all of the skills and attributes necessary to kind of push the experience to the next level. I'm sure that that will come because it's just necessary to provide that
They've been harmed, and what's more, Australia is now politicizing, as you said, and also weaponizing, economic cooperation as a way to work with the U.S. to contain China's development. Australia is losing the trust and confidence of the Chinese businesses and investors. And China is still Australia's biggest trade partner. There is still a free trade agreement between our two countries. So if normal businesses, their business relations cannot be ensured or protected, their economic cooperation between the two countries is being pushed and squeezed by Canberra for dead end.
Then what do you make of the deep-rooted causes and reasons behind these provocative actions from the Australian government?
Well, there are 2,500 American soldiers based in Darwin, and the U.S. Army has military interests in this place. In particular, this is the northernmost part of Australia, very close to China, especially to the South China Sea. It is also close to the South Pacific island countries, where China has been working constructively with the local government and the peoples with regard to Belt and Road projects and other aid and development programs. With the language agreement, being signed, it met at a time, with the strongest opposition by the United States, which of course had been a blatant interference with Australia's, domestic affairs. However, as we can see, the Australian government has been almost, echoing, step by step, policy and strategies from Washington, and it came to the present, likelihood of the possible cancellation of the lease. It is very ironic that Canberra has been, on the one hand, hyping up such rhetoric as sovereignty and independence, while in essence and in practice, it has been simply serving the interests of a foreign government, that is the U.S. government, and harming its own strategic and long-term interests.
Recently, we see New Zealand is taking a different approach in expressing its opposition to the U.S. when it comes to countering China, since its foreign minister has indicated her country feels uncomfortable being dragged into a value war led by the U.S. against China. So a question that many observers have asked, why is Australia, a member of the Five Eyes partnership, reluctant to make independent choices that go against America's anti-China policies?
Yes, it's a very good question. Despite the fact that Australia looks much larger than New Zealand, but Australia is far less mature in terms of its foreign policy and strategy. New Zealand has been regularly upholding its independence when it comes to its own, national interest and security. For example, it refused to follow the U.S. demand to take part in the Vietnam War, in the 1960s and 70s, while Australia is never absent in, overseas warfare launched by the United States. New Zealand, for example, also rejected the U.S. request for the U.S. nuclear warships to be harbored in New Zealand ports, causing Wellington at the time to be ostracized from the ANZUS Treaty, the military agreement between Australia, New Zealand, and also the United States. So I think actually the status, the standing of New Zealand, dwarf Australia in the international arena. Australia has been attaching itself to a bigger power to ensure its sense of security, first to Britain.
Although discussions with Indian officials are ongoing.
We have PPE that we can assist India and other governments with.
The United States is providing India with raw materials to make vaccines. I'm Momin Qureshi.
680 News Time, 7:48. York Region is expanding its vaccine rollout in the city of Vaughan. 25,000 new appointments are available for residents 35.
Billion Studies Center at East China Normal University. China will launch a series of promotional activities in May to boost spending as the retail sector recovers from COVID-19-induced consumer caution. It will include a new consumer goods expo in South China's Hainan province, expanding domestic consumption in a priority in China's dual circulation economic strategy. So for more on this, our Zhao Yang spoke with Winston Wang, Managing Director of Shipson Group Limited, and Einar Tangen, author and columnist.
So first of all, China will launch a month-long campaign promoting consumption in May. So how important is consumption in China's economy now?
Well, it's very important. If you go back to 2019, 3.5% of the 6% GDP increase was due to consumption. It's over 50% now, and this is a very important part of China's development plan, which is to move more into the tertiary services area. And, you know, it makes a lot of sense. The service industry, especially leisure, which is one of the areas that they want to really improve on, these employ a lot of people. You're not going to have too many robots showing you around the mountain and that type of thing.
Why not?
And, you know, with hotels, etc.
More people would go if you did it that way.
With Real Betis in La Liga, which seriously dented their title ambitions, whereas Chelsea boosted their top four prospects with a 1-0 win at West Ham United. Chelsea have
effectively the end of the Beijing hour.
Anthony Hopkins won Best Actor in Sunday's 93rd Oscars, and it was a surprise victory that
under the way. The recovery seems to be able to come back very strong. And I believe it's based on two of the most important factors. The one is the people's confidence is well restored, and the infrastructure and the well managed kind of by the government or the good management or contributing to this. On the other hand, there are a number of new waves of the breakouts, such as recently we've seen in India, that might create some disturbances on the international markets and make it a little harder. So that means then both the international market and the domestic market will rely on Chinese manufacturing, Chinese supply for an extended period of time. So all this, I'm not surprised that we're seeing all the numbers are coming back very strong.
So I know there is a lot of discussions about the domestic consumption, and economists say it is still uneven across different sectors, different regions. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, you've seen, the cities have done very well. Wherever you've had more affluent consumers, you've seen a rebound in demand, even what they call revenge spending. That means a lot of luxury items are sold. But in the rural areas, which traditionally lag the rest of the economy, it has been much slower going. There is a slight edge up in unemployment. Nothing too serious, but it's one of those areas, like I said, where the government is trying to have balanced development. They had a very strong V-shaped recovery, as Winston said, 1 quarter down and then 3 very strong back-to-back quarters. When you were mentioning earlier about the increase, remember that the latest increase came a full almost 5 points above where they expected. It was expected at 28, and it came in much, much stronger. So, people are quite pleasantly surprised. China will continue to provide most of the growth. A lot of studies have indicated at least 20% until 2026 of the world's entire growth will be due to China.
So can the consumption really be stimulated or supported by the government policy, Aina, or is the real issue the jobs and disposable income?
Jobs and disposable income are long-term, but in order to get people back, you have to have these kind of jumpstart programs. And that's what you're seeing this month here, is that the Chinese government said, look, how do we stimulate things? We need to get the leisure industry going. We need to have consumption. And it's not just Chinese consumption. They're also pushing consumption from everywhere. They're making it very clear that China's market is not closed, like some other economies. And they're doing their best to get people out and consuming. And I think China sees this not just as a domestic issue, but they want to restart the entire world. So it's so far so good.
So far so good. But how different are the habits between the consumers of different ages here in China? For instance, how does consumption differ between the middle age groups and the Generation Z?
Well, let's break this down. If you take millennials and Gen Zs together, they comprise 40% of the total population, but 60% of population in urban areas. So these are very important consumers. You can see that in the advertising that's going out, and they're very different from what you were saying, the middle-aged consumers. These are people who make their mind up based on, likes and dislikes that they hear from TikTok or from social media. They're very restless. They really put experience above, actually holding a lot of items. If instead of buying a house, they might say, look, I'm going to take some trips over the next few years, or I won't save as much for a house right now. Very, very different consumer patterns, and one which people are really starting to take notice of because this is where the future markets are.
Winston, how different do you think are the habits between, the consumers of the middle age groups and the Generation Z?
I believe the biggest difference is a lot more people spend a lot more time online, either education or the online purchase of the groceries, or even sometimes a lot of the the entertainment. So those in general. But in terms of the age group, I think right now you still see a dominant proportion of the users are the younger generation people. But having said that, I've witnessed around me that a lot more, senior citizens, like my parents, they are spending a lot more time on the internet. They are buying a lot of stuff more on the internet too. That was very rare before, but now they are, becoming sort of more attuned and more accepted